When Elena Vance, my CEO wife, learned that I had voluntarily handed a multi-million-dollar project to her favorite young assistant, she assumed her 3-month Cold War against me had finally paid off. She was beaming, proactively suggesting we finally go on our honeymoon to Iceland. But she didn't know that the last page of that project transfer agreement was a divorce settlement she had signed with her own hand. When she flaked on our honeymoon yet again to soothe her jealous assistant, handing him the plane tickets instead, I simply nodded. She thought I was finally being sensible. She didn't see that as I turned around, my ring finger was already bare. Elena walked out of the study wearing a smile that suggested the rain had cleared, and she was back in total control. "Honey, about the Polaris project, are you sure you're okay with letting Julian lead it?" She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, her tone laced with a charity-like gentleness. I was crouching on the floor, using a wet wipe to clean up a coffee stain her cat had knocked over. "Yeah, I've thought it through." I didn't look up. "He's young. He's got drive. He's been learning from you for a long time. It's time he stood on his own 2 feet." The air went quiet for a few seconds. I could feel Elena's gaze on me, assessing me like an object that had finally been tamed. "I'm really glad you see it that way." She walked over and crouched down, seemingly to help, but her hand paused in midair before finally resting on my shoulder for a patronizing pat. "I know I've been cold lately. The pressure at the company has been insane." "Don't take it to heart," she explained. "You're my husband after all. You're still in my heart." I wiped the last spot, tossed the wipe into the trash, stood up, and looked at her. Her eyes were bright, reflecting my silhouette, a calm man in loungewear. "I know," I nodded. My obedience satisfied her immensely. She took my hand, her face showing a long-absent enthusiasm. "To reward you, let's go on our honeymoon. We'll go to Iceland, just like you always wanted. We'll see the northern lights." I watched as she excitedly pulled out her phone to search for flights and hotels, acting as if our 3-month Cold War and the countless nights I'd spent alone in this empty house had simply vanished with this reward. I didn't speak. I just silently walked into the kitchen to start dinner. In 3 years of marriage, I had washed my hands of the business world to make soup for her. I gave up a career I was proud of to become what she called her strongest support. She went from a fledgling entrepreneur to a dominating female CEO, and I went from her business partner to her house husband. She had grown used to my sacrifices, used to my concessions to the point where she believed everything I did was simply expected. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from Julian Hayes' Instagram feed. A photo of a plane ticket. Destination, Iceland. The caption read, "Thanks to CEO Vance for the validation. The best reward, red heart." I turned off my phone and dumped the sliced beef into the pan. A sizzling sound erupted and the aroma instantly filled the air. Elena's phone rang right on cue. "Hello, Julian. What's wrong?" Her voice instantly shifted to nervousness. I couldn't hear what was said on the other end. Only that Elena's brow furrowed tighter and tighter. Okay, don't throw a tantrum. When have I ever lied to you? It's just one project. There will be other chances after the honeymoon." Her voice dropped lower as she took the phone into the bedroom and shut the door. 10 minutes later, she came out. Her face carried a mix of apology and undeniable resolve. "Honey, the honeymoon might have to be postponed." I stirred the beef in the pan with chopsticks, not looking at her. "Why?" "Something urgent came up at the company. A business trip to Europe. It's critical. I have to go personally." She walked up to me, her tone softening even more. "You know how it is. The Polaris project just got handed over. I'm not comfortable leaving Julian alone with it yet. I need to mentor him a bit more." I turned off the stove and leaned against the counter. "So the tickets to Iceland, you gave them to him?" I asked. Elena froze for a second, then explained with unnatural casualness. "Well, they were non-refundable anyway. It would be a waste. Consider it a reward for him. Let him blow off some steam so he comes back more motivated." She paused, then added, "Personal feelings are small matters. Work has to come first. As the boss, I have to prioritize the business. You're my husband. Surely you understand." I looked at her. Her gaze was frank, even holding a hint of entitled pride that I should be proud of her sacrifices for their shared future. In her heart, compared to her career or even her assistant's moods, I was insignificant. I nodded. "Okay, I understand." She finally let out a breath and smiled with satisfaction. "I knew you were the most generous, sensible man.
Don't be upset. I promise I'll make it up to you with an even more romantic honeymoon.
She thought I believed her. She didn't know that the urgent European trip she spoke of was actually a couple's trip to Iceland.
She also didn't know that my nod wasn't understanding. It was goodbye. After Elena left, the house felt instantly empty.
Her favorite ragdoll cat jumped onto the sofa and nudged my hand, seemingly confused why I was the only one home.
I opened my phone and clicked on a hidden album.
Inside was another screenshot, Julian's Instagram post, visible only to a specific show-off group. Unfortunately for him, I was in that group. In the photo, he and Elena were pressed together in the blue lagoon, heads touching, forming a heart shape with their hands.
The background was misty steam and snowy mountains. Caption, just the two of us smirking face. The timestamp was 30 minutes ago.
The so-called urgent trip, the mentoring of a new hire, it was all a lie she'd told me to comfort another man.
I calmly turned off my phone and opened a drawer under the coffee table. Inside lay a file folder.
I took it out and dumped the contents. A divorce agreement, a gratuitous transfer of equity shares, and one more thing.
My resignation letter. All the signature lines bore Elena's flamboyant signature.
She had signed with force, as if closing a deal that would bring her massive profits.
Ironically, she actually thought she was gaining everything.
A week ago, I had shuffled these documents into a massive stack of her company's quarterly financial reports and investment intent letters for her to sign.
Honey, just check these for me. I trust your judgment.
She was busy on a video call with Julian discussing a newly released movie, barely looking up as she scribbled her name wherever I pointed.
3 years of marriage had built absolute trust in me, especially regarding paperwork.
She was used to me handling everything from household trivia to family assets. She never asked, never bothered to read a single line. That trust used to be my sweet burden. Now it was the sharpest knife I used to cut my chains.
I packed away my copy of the documents.
I left the other copy of the divorce agreement and the wedding ring she gave me, already removed from my finger, side by side on the most conspicuous spot of the coffee table. Then, pulling my pre-packed suitcase, I walked out of the home I once thought would be my forever.
I didn't look back. The door clicked shut behind me.
I placed the key under the doormat and turned toward the elevator.
The doors slid shut, the mirrored surface reflecting my face.
It was far too calm for a man who had just ended a 3-year marriage.
My phone buzzed.
A message from my lawyer.
Mr. Cole, everything is done as instructed. The assets under your name have been divested.
The resignation has passed internal channels to the board, and divorce legal proceedings have been initiated.
I replied with 2 words. Thank you.
A car was waiting for me downstairs. The driver was my old college buddy and partner in my new venture, Marcus Reed.
All done. He handed me a bottle of water. Yeah. I unscrewed the cap and took a sip. You really just walking away like this? Not going to tear into her face to face? I was ready to storm back there and help you make a scene. Marcus looked eager for a fight. I shook my head. No point for someone you no longer care about. Any intense emotion is a waste.
I just wanted to leave quietly and start my new life.
Where to? Marcus started the engine. The airport. Going on a trip to clear your head.
I'll go with you.
Not a trip.
I looked out the window at the rapidly retreating streetscape and said flatly, I'm going to meet a client to discuss a deal 10 times bigger than the Polaris project.
Marcus glanced at me in the rearview mirror and whistled, nice. Now that's the Ethan Cole I know.
Yes, this was the real me, the business wizard who had never known defeat. Not the Mr. Cole who wore an apron and waited by the stove for his wife to come home.
Elena, the game is over. Or perhaps I should say my game has just begun. 5 days later, Elena returned.
When she called me, I was in the conference room of Genesis Tech, signing a strategic partnership agreement worth $1 billion. My phone buzzed on the table, the label wife flashing across the screen.
Sitting opposite me was the founder of Genesis Tech,
Robert Sterling, a man near 50 with eyes as sharp as an eagle's. He glanced at my phone, then at me, and gestured that I should take the call. I picked up the phone, silenced it, and hung up. Just a telemarketer, I smiled at him. Robert smiled too, a meaningful glint in his eyes.
A telemarketer that can distract Ethan Cole mid-signing ceremony must be quite something.
I didn't respond, simply sliding the fully signed contract across the table.
Mr. Sterling, it's a pleasure doing business.
Likewise. We shook hands, camera flashes illuminating the room to record this historic moment.
Elena had already been erased from my future history. The phone rang again. I hung up once more.
Then a flood of text messages popped up.
Ethan, what is the meaning of this? Why aren't you answering? Where are you? A string of interrogations full of the rage of someone unused to being disobeyed.
I could picture her expression right now, furrowed brows, a face twisted with confusion and irritation. She had probably come home, found no hot meal, no husband greeting her at the door as usual, and flown into a fit of upset. I casually blocked her number, then sent a quick message to Marcus.
It's starting, Marcus replied instantly. Ha, awesome.
I can't wait to see her face when she finds out the truth.
My partnership with Robert was the first gift I'd prepared for my comeback.
This project was something Elena's company had fought tooth and nail to secure for 6 long months.
Unfortunately, she never knew Robert Sterling was an old friend of my father's.
She also never realized this entire project had been designed by Robert specifically as my grand return to the industry from the very start.
The reason I'd laid low beside Elena for 3 years was twofold.
Partly to repay her for standing with me during my earliest startup struggles, and partly to honor a pact with my father to stay out of core tech industries until I turned 30.
I was 32 now.
The pact was void, and my old debt had long been repaid.
After the meeting wrapped up, Robert pulled me aside.
That girl still hasn't realized you were the real anchor holding her entire company together.
He poured me a cup of tea.
She always thought the stability and success were all her own doing.
I lifted the teacup, inhaling the warm aroma. Young people can be so arrogant.
But it will do her good to suffer a small setback and learn a lesson, Robert sighed.
It's just a pity about the empire you built for her.
Elena's company had grown from a tiny workshop of fewer than 10 staff to a multi-billion-dollar listed enterprise. Behind every key decision and core technical breakthrough lay my shadow. I had pushed all credit onto her, letting her stand center stage to accept endless praise and adoration.
Once I'd thought that was love.
Later, I understood it had only been foolish, one-sided self-sacrifice.
My phone rang once again, this time from an unfamiliar number. I answered. Ethan, where the hell are you? It was Elena's voice, exasperated, with a faint tremor of panic she couldn't fully hide. It was clear she'd seen the documents left on the coffee table. Does my location matter to CEO Vance?
My tone was flat, identical to how I'd speak to any random business associate. Silence crackled on the other end. The cold title CEO Vance pricked her inflated ego like a pin to a balloon.
For 3 years, I'd only ever called her Ellie or Babe. What do you mean?
Her voice softened, tangled with confusion and quiet fear.
The paper's on the table, this is a joke, right? Do I look like I'm joking? I countered.
I heard her ragdoll cat meow softly in the background, as if trying to soothe its distraught owner.
Ethan, stop messing around. Come back immediately.
Her tone shifted to coaxing softness.
I know I was wrong this time. I shouldn't have bailed on our honeymoon for Julian. I'm apologizing, okay? Not okay. My crisp 2-word reply plunged her back into heavy silence.
She'd never imagined the husband who'd submitted to every wish of hers would speak to her this way. What? She finally asked, her voice thick with incomprehensible grievance.
Just because of one honeymoon trip? I said I'd make it up to you. You want a divorce over something this small? I laughed hollowly. Small.
I leaned back against the office sofa, watching traffic stream past the window.
Elena, in your eyes, what counts as something big? Is it the company's stock price? Landing a new project? Or whether your precious little assistant is happy each day?
My voice never rose, yet every word struck her heart like a tiny hammer.
In your eyes, my feelings, our promises, our marriage are all just insignificant trivial matters? That's not what I meant.
She rushed to defend herself.
How can you mix work and personal feelings?
I'm fighting for our shared future.
We don't have a future.
I cut her off sharply.
We lost that the second you signed that agreement. I didn't know.
I had no idea what those papers were. She nearly screamed.
You tricked me. Tricked you? I chuckled lightly. CEO Vance, before signing any legal document, didn't your legal team and assistants teach you to read the full contents first? A CEO of a billion-dollar listed company making such an amateur mistake?
If word leaks out, it will tank your stock price instantly. Heavy, labored breathing came from the other end of the line. She was choked speechless by my retort.
Ethan, what do you want?
After a long stretch of quiet, she asked wearily.
I don't want anything.
Divorce.
Split the assets, and we each move on. I won't agree. She shot back immediately. I refuse to divorce you. That decision is no longer yours to make. I stood, ready to leave the office.
You signed the binding agreement, and all legal divorce proceedings have already commenced.
If you insist on dragging this to court, I am fully prepared, but I'd strongly advise against it. The evidence I hold is more than enough to send your company's stock crashing by tomorrow morning. That was my final warning.
I hung up and added her new number to my block list.
Peace settled over the room.
Moments later, Marcus sent a screenshot of Elena's internal company chat group, which had completely exploded.
Did you hear Mr. Cole resigned?
Which Mr. Cole? We have another Mr. Cole, the CEO's husband.
Wasn't he just the house husband? When was he part of core company staff? You're new, right? Mr. Cole is a founding member.
He conquered the market side by side with CEO Vance in the early days. He stepped back to prioritize family later, but most of the company's core technical patents are registered under Mr. Cole's name.
Holy shit, for real? So his resignation is huge news. It's not just a resignation.
Word is he dumped all his founding shareholder shares.
The entire board is in chaos right now. I stared at the flood of messages with a blank expression. Elena, this is only the beginning. You thought I was merely an accessory to your success.
Soon you will learn who truly gave you everything you own.
For the following week, I vanished completely.
I changed my phone number, moved into an apartment Marcus arranged for me, and threw myself fully into the Genesis Tech collaborative project. I operated like a tightly wound machine running at maximum speed, only 4 hours of sleep each day, the rest filled with meetings, data analysis, and schematic optimization. Even Marcus grew worried.
Bro, this isn't building a new life, it's burning yourself out.
Even if you want revenge on your ex, you don't need to push yourself this hard.
I shook my head. I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing this for myself. For 3 years, I suppressed every part of who I am. My ambition and creativity were like a blocked volcano, desperate for an outlet to erupt. I love the feeling of control, turning abstract blueprints into tangible reality. It's infinitely more satisfying than agonizing over what to cook for dinner each night. During this time, Elena exhausted every possible lead trying to track me down.
She visited my parents' home, marched to Marcus's company, and tracked down several of my old friends. But everyone repeated the same line, don't know, not sure, no clue. Stuck hitting walls with me, she redirected all her rage onto others. Marcus filled me in that Julian's work life had turned into pure hell. Before I left the house, I'd intentionally planted a massive technical trap within the Polaris project framework. It was an underlying architecture that appeared flawless on the surface, yet would crash the entire data system the second a single core parameter was altered. And only I held the key to adjusting that parameter safely. After taking over the project, Julian, eager to prove his worth to Elena, tweaked several settings he deemed trivial. Overnight, the project's entire data model devolved into meaningless gibberish. This project was Elena's company's core priority for the second half of the year, partnered with a massive industry giant. A missed deliverable meant astronomical penalty fees and irreparably ruined corporate reputation. Elena worked all-nighters alongside her technical team, yet no one could locate the root error. She finally realized there was no one alive capable of fixing this project except me. So she doubled her frantic hunt to find my whereabouts. That night, immediately after wrapping a video conference, my apartment doorbell rang non-stop. I peered through the peephole and saw the face I'd once loved deeply, now utterly foreign to me. Elena stood outside, haggard, with heavy dark circles etched beneath her eyes. She wore a business suit, yet lacked her usual sharp polish. Her hair was messy, her face drained of all energy, etched with anxiety. I did not open the door. She rang the bell repeatedly. Receiving no response, she began pounding hard against the wood. Ethan, I know you're in there. Open the door. Let's talk, okay? I'm begging you. The Polaris project is failing, only you can fix it. You can't be this irresponsible. Her tone shifted from commanding, to pleading, and finally to sharp accusation. I leaned against the back of the door, listening quietly, my heart completely unmoved. Irresponsible. When I handed full control of the project to Julian, what had she said? I trust him, and you should trust me too. Now that disaster struck, she came chasing the so-called irresponsible one she'd pushed aside. The knocking faded. I thought she'd left. Seconds later, my phone rang. It was the building concierge. Mr. Cole, your wife claims she's feeling unwell and is about to collapse at your doorway.
Should we send assistance? I frowned.
The sympathy play, her go-to tactic during every argument. In the past, the second she feigned weakness, a headache or stomachache, I'd instantly soften and surrender to her demands.
Unfortunately for her, the same trick no longer held any power over me.
Tell her there is a lounge in the lobby, or call an ambulance for her.
I hung up the call.
Outside the door, I heard Elena's disbelieving shout, "Ethan, you bastard." Then the sharp clatter of high heels stomping away, fading into the distance. I walked back into the living room, poured a glass of red wine, and stood beside the floor-to-ceiling window.
Downstairs beside Elena's luxury sedan, Julian waited anxiously.
When he saw her emerge, he hurried over, checking on her health and rushing to open the car door.
Elena roughly shoved him aside and slid into the driver's seat alone.
They argued heatedly for a minute beside the vehicle.
In the end, Julian was forced out of the car and left stranded on the curb as her white Maserati sped off into the night.
I swirled the wine in my glass, watching her taillights vanish around the street corner.
Elena, you still don't understand. The core problem was never the project, it was us.
And Julian, you were never some irreplaceable treasure. You were merely a tool she wielded to assert authority over me and fuel her petty jealousy.
Now it seems her tool has stopped working as intended. The next morning, as soon as the stock market opened, Elena's company share price plummeted without pause.
Word of the Polaris data collapse had leaked to the public. The partnering industry giant issued a public statement: if Elena's firm could not resolve the critical flaw within 7 days, they would file formal breach of contract claims and blacklist the company permanently. Panic swept through every department of her business.
Marcus sent me a text. Guess who leaked the news?
I replied simply, no one but Julian.
Julian was a refined egoist. Once he realized Elena
was an unreliable patron who would throw him under the bus as the sole scapegoat at the first crisis, he would not hesitate to protect himself even if it meant burning the company down alongside her. By exposing the project failure publicly, he ensured Elena could not quietly pin all blame on him without looking wildly incompetent to the board and shareholders.
Sure enough, news arrived by afternoon that Elena had fought fiercely with the board to retain Julian as project lead, issuing a mandatory order that the technical fault would be fully resolved within a week. She pinned every last shred of hope on me. She believed that if she could track me down, she could bind me to return using marital duty, corporate interests, and our shared past. She was far too confident. Or rather, she did not know the man I had become at all. That evening, I received an unexpected incoming call, my mother-in-law, Martha Vance. Ethan, it's Mom.
Her voice was as gentle as it had always been.
Mom, I answered. Within this marriage, I'd never been close to my own birth parents, I'd always been far warmer toward Martha. She was a kind retired teacher who treated me like her own son. She represented the only genuine warmth I'd found in this failed marriage. What is going on between you and Ellie? How did it spiral all the way to divorce?
Her tone brimmed with unmasked worry.
Mom, this is a matter between the two of us.
I know, but Ellie has locked herself in her office for days straight, refusing to eat or drink a thing. I visited her today, she's wasted away so much it breaks my heart. I remained silent.
Ethan, all couples fight. It happens.
Ellie is ambitious, she has a quick temper, and sometimes she fails to consider your feelings, that is her fault.
You are the man here. Can you bear with her a little longer? Please.
Mom, I bore it for 3 full years.
I cut her off.
I set aside my own thriving career to accommodate her every demand. And in her heart, I am less important than a newly hired assistant. A long, heavy sigh came from the other end of the line.
That Julian boy, I've met him. Smooth-tongued, not a good kid at all.
Ellie has been completely charmed by his empty nonsense.
Ethan, give her one more chance.
For my sake, come back and help her.
This company was built from your shared blood and sweat together.
Mom, this company is her blood and sweat alone, not mine. I corrected her flatly. My hard work and sacrifices were taken for granted long ago.
As for the divorce, my mind is fully made up.
I told Martha everything, Julian, the Iceland plane tickets, every layer of her deception. A long stretch of dead silence followed.
That wretched girl. Martha's voice trembled with shock. How could she do something so shameful?
I'm going over there right now to give her a proper lesson.
Mom, there is no need, I said calmly.
She chose her own path, and she must bear the consequences of her choices. I am grateful for all your kindness these past 3 years. Please take good care of yourself. After hanging up, a bitter taste lingered in my mouth. Martha was innocent throughout all of this, the only person I felt I owed any kindness to. But that was the full extent of my obligations. I would not halt my forward progress for anyone. Elena eventually uncovered my new apartment address, not through the concierge or mutual friends, but by hiring a private investigator. When I opened the front door and saw her standing there alongside her mother, I felt no surprise whatsoever.
Martha's eyes were red and swollen from crying. Elena looked far worse than the last time she'd visited.
Pale as paper, yet her eyes burned with strange, stubborn defiance.
Ethan, let Mom inside. Let us talk properly.
Martha clutched my hand, her tone begging.
I stepped sideways and allowed them to enter the apartment.
It was the first time we'd faced one another since I walked out of our shared home.
Elena scanned every corner of the room rapidly, as if searching for proof of something.
When she spotted a woman's apron hanging to dry on the balcony left by my regular cleaning lady, her pupils shrank sharply.
You already have someone new.
She pointed shakily at the apron, her voice trembling.
I could not be bothered to waste breath explaining.
I sat down on the sofa and poured myself a glass of water.
Speak. What do you want? My cold detachment triggered her rage instantly. Ethan, how can you treat me like this?
She rushed forward, snatched the water glass from my grasp, and slammed it hard against the floor. The sharp crash of shattered glass pierced the quiet room. I sacrificed so much for you. I built this massive company for our family, and you walk away without a second thought and you've already found a replacement behind my back.
Have you no conscience at all?
She screamed like a wounded animal.
Martha was terrified, grabbing tightly at her daughter's arm. Ellie, calm down.
Speak nicely to him.
Mom, how can I stay calm?
Elena shook her mother off roughly, pointing an accusing finger straight at me. He wants a divorce, he wants to destroy the empire I built, and he's seeing another woman behind my back. Staring at her face twisted with unbridled rage, I suddenly found the whole scene almost laughable.
Elena, have you forgotten exactly how this company came to exist?
I stood and walked slowly toward her. I stood a full head taller, and looking down at her cast a silent, heavy pressure over her.
Have you forgotten I put up all the initial startup capital? Have you forgotten I pulled 3 straight all-nighters to draft our first core technical patent? Have you forgotten when you panicked over a tiny minor order, who used his entire personal network to secure millions in angel investment on your behalf? Have you forgotten when competitors sought to crush you entirely and the company teetered on bankruptcy, who cleared every obstacle behind the scenes so you could stand unharmed in the spotlight?
With every sentence I spoke, Elena's face paled further and further. The past she'd deliberately erased, or deluded herself into crediting solely to her own merit, was torn wide open and laid bare under harsh daylight.
This company is not your blood and sweat. It is my life's work.
I let you take the title of CEO, I let you stand in the spotlight and accept every ounce of glory, not because you were uniquely capable, but because I loved you. I thought stepping back from the front lines would grant us a stable home and peace of mind for you.
But I was wrong.
I looked directly into her eyes, enunciating each word clearly.
You never wanted an equal partner.
You wanted an obedient subordinate who would follow every order without question, a backdrop designed only to highlight your brilliance.
Now this backdrop has handed in his resignation.
The living room fell completely silent, dead quiet. Elena stared at me blankly, her lips moving repeatedly yet producing no sound whatsoever. Martha wept silently beside her.
So?
Elena's voice was as weightless as a feather.
The Polaris project, you can fix it, right?
Even at this critical moment, her heart remained fixated solely on her project and her company.
I laughed outright. Yes.
Her eyes instantly lit up, clinging to this last fragile straw of hope.
Then you.
But why would I help you? I cut her off mid-sentence.
CEO Vance, we are legally separated and heading for divorce. I am now your direct competitor. Why would I assist my rival in solving a fatal operational crisis? Ethan?
She shrieked in shock.
Stop screaming.
I picked at my ear lazily. For Mom's sake, I can point you toward a clear path forward. She quieted instantly, watching me with nervous anticipation.
File for bankruptcy and corporate reorganization.
I stated flatly. That is your only viable, best way out.
Elena froze solid. She appeared unable to process, or simply refused to believe, what she just heard. Bankruptcy, reorganization.
She muttered the words numbly, then shook her head violently.
No, impossible. This company is my entire life. I will never let it go bankrupt. That decision is not truly within your power anymore. I leaned back against the sofa, fully relaxed.
Within 1 week, the penalty fees from the Polaris breach, bank loan recall demands, and the chain reaction triggered by the stock crash will completely crush your cash flow.
It will no longer be a question of whether you wish to file bankruptcy, it will become mandatory.
I looked at her as one might watch a child throwing a meaningless tantrum.
Of course, you have a second option. What option? She asked immediately, desperate for any alternative. Beg me to come back. I smirked faintly. Kneel down and beg me. Beg to return and clean up the mess you created. Beg to stand beside you once more as your background prop. Her face flushed bright crimson, her entire body trembling with overwhelming humiliation.
You can keep dreaming, she ground out through clenched teeth.
There we go again.
I spread my hands wide. You cannot let go of your pitiful ego, yet you lack the ability to resolve the crisis facing you.
Elena, you are far too greedy. I stood, walked to the front door, and pulled it open. Mom, it's growing late.
I'll walk you downstairs.
I did not spare Elena a single extra glance.
Martha wiped away her endless tears, glanced at me, then at her frozen daughter, and let out a deep, exhausted sigh.
Ethan, Ellie wronged you terribly. I will not ask you to forgive her.
I only beg one thing, do not push yourself too hard in this battle.
I nodded. I know. Don't worry about me.
I escorted Martha down to a waiting taxi.
From start to finish, Elena never followed us outside. Back inside the empty apartment, the glass shards had long been swept away, yet a faint scratch mark remained etched into the floorboards.
Much like our marriage, once shattered, there was no mending what had broken. The next day, I officially attended a major technology summit as Genesis Tech's strategic core partner. When I stepped onto the stage to articulate our vision for future AI smart city infrastructure, I spotted Elena in the audience crowd. She stood tucked away in the farthest back corner, watching me from a distance, observing this version of me that felt simultaneously familiar and alienly confident, composed, radiating unmissable brilliance. That light had once shone solely for her benefit. Now I revealed it to the entire world, and she could only stand trapped in the shadows, forced to look upward. After my speech concluded, reporters and industry partners swarmed around me to ask questions. Through the thick crowd, I caught sight of Elena attempting to push through to reach me, yet security staff blocked her path instantly. She shouted my name in frantic desperation, yet her voice was completely drowned out by surrounding noise. An uncrossable sea of people stood permanently between us. Once the summit wrapped, my name, alongside the new Genesis Tech project, dominated headlines across every major financial and technology media outlet. Ethan Cole, the name that had vanished from public view for 3 silent years, returned to the spotlight like a king reclaiming his long-empty throne. Every journalist scrambled to uncover the story of this sudden industry wizard. Soon my full past was dug up and circulated widely, my history with Elena, our co-founding of her company, my voluntary retreat to support her rise. The story quickly became the hottest gossip circulating through corporate circles. Public opinion split sharply into distinct camps. Some hailed me as the ultimate devoted man who sacrificed everything for love before finally waking up to his own worth. Others condemned Elena as an ungrateful social climber who'd scrambled onto her husband's shoulders only to kick him away once she tasted success. Of course, a small faction suspected all of this was an elaborately staged revenge plot I'd orchestrated from the start. I ignored every single public comment circulating online. I was far too busy advancing my project and building my new core team. Marcus took on the role of my deputy. We recruited top-tier talent and rapidly built an elite operational force. Meanwhile, Elena's company deteriorated at a visible, accelerating rate. The 7-day deadline for resolving the Polaris disaster expired without a solution. The partnering industry giant formally terminated all cooperation contracts and filed massive breach of contract litigation. Bank demand letters arrived nonstop like falling snowflakes. The board split into warring factions. Shareholders dumped stock en masse, driving share prices down to historic all-time lows, one step away from formal delisting. Julian, the assistant Elena had once doted on endlessly, became her first convenient scapegoat. Elena fired him for gross professional negligence, pinning the full weight of the failed Polaris project entirely on his shoulders. Naturally, Julian refused to take the fall quietly. The day following his termination, he leaked explosive evidence to every media outlet in the city. He possessed full chat logs, intimate private photographs,
and concrete proof that Elena had embezzled corporate funds to purchase luxury gifts solely for him. One stone stirred up 1,000 waves of scandal. If my divorce had merely counted as trivial business gossip, Elena was now mired in dual scandals spanning professional ethics and illegal financial conduct.
A woman scorned cannot compare to a cornered man with nothing left to lose.
Marcus marveled at the news updates. Those two dogs tearing each other apart, mouths full of fur. I did not lift my eyes from the project report spread across my desk. They are merely reaping what they sowed. I held zero interest in their sordid farce. That afternoon in my office, I received an unexpected phone call from Elena. She'd somehow tracked down my new private number. "Ethan, you win."
Her voice was hoarse, exhausted, stripped of all emotion, stagnant as still pond water.
"My company is filing for bankruptcy."
"Oh." I turned a page of my project documentation. My complete indifference appeared to be exactly what she'd anticipated. She did not scream as she had in prior calls, simply stating cold, unvarnished facts. The board has voted to submit bankruptcy protection filings, to be announced first thing Monday morning. They want to beg you to return and lead the corporate restructuring effort. She paused, a faint tremor seeping into her voice. "If you agree to come back, they are prepared to offer you the CEO position plus 50% of all outstanding company shares." I paused mid-writing with my pen. 50% equity plus full CEO authority. That meant if I nodded my head, the business empire I'd built with my own two hands would return fully under my control. It was an undeniably tempting offer.
"And what about you?" I asked. "Are you willing to step aside?"
A long, heavy silence stretched across the line. I could easily imagine the crushing internal struggle she endured to surrender the empire she'd clung to so fiercely and bow her head to the man she'd discarded. The thought was far worse to her than any physical death. She began haltingly. "I am willing, as long as you come back. I am willing to do absolutely anything." Her voice cracked into broken sobs.
"Ethan, let's not get divorced, okay? Let's return to how things used to be.
You help me, and together we will grow the company bigger and stronger than ever before." I cut her off before she could finish speaking.
"You still don't understand a single thing. I never wanted your company." I hung up the phone.
Outside the office windows, the sunset blazed a deep crimson red.
One era had fully ended, and my own era had only just begun. A week later, Elena's company officially declared bankruptcy. The once glamorous, towering business empire collapsed amid waves of public disbelief.
I refused all 3 formal recruitment attempts sent by the board to return and clean up the wreckage. Eventually, a larger industrial conglomerate purchased the firm to conduct internal restructuring. Elena, as founding CEO, was fully pushed out with no remaining authority or equity. She plummeted from the clouds straight into mud, losing everything she'd worked to build overnight. I heard she sold her downtown luxury penthouse and moved back in with her parents. I heard Julian was sentenced to prison for embezzlement and leaking confidential trade secrets. I heard she'd fallen into heavy drinking, spending every day in a numb stupor. Marcus relayed all of these updates to me.
I never once asked after her. Her life no longer held any connection to mine whatsoever. My own project advanced steadily and methodically.
The AI Smart City concept secured powerful government backing, marking us as the flagship star project of the industry. I worked every single day, yet felt deeply fulfilled for the first time in years. Occasionally, in the quiet dead of night, my thoughts drifted back to the distant past. I would picture the young girl in a white dress on a university campus, smiling with soft dimples in her cheeks. I would picture our days crammed into a 10-square-meter rental apartment, splitting a single bowl of instant noodles yet brimming with bright hope for our shared future. I would picture how she'd thrown her arms around me and cried tears of joy the day she secured her first investment round. We had truly loved each other once, that was an undeniable fact. Yet somewhere along the road, we drifted irreparably apart. Perhaps time changed us, perhaps our hearts shifted, most likely both. One day, after attending a ribbon-cutting ceremony for our new tech campus, I spotted a familiar figure waiting by the venue entrance, Martha. She appeared far older than the last time we'd met, gray hairs lining her temples visibly. "Ethan," she called out to me. I signaled to Marcus to bring the vehicle around, then walked over to greet her.
"Mom, what brings you here?"
"I came to apologize on Ellie's behalf." She pulled a small velvet box out of her handbag and handed it to me.
"And also to say thank you." I opened the box.
Inside rested the wedding ring I'd left abandoned on the coffee table the day I walked out.
Thank me for what?
Thank you for not kicking her when she was already down.
Martha looked at me with complicated, sorrowful eyes. The conglomerate that acquired Ellie's company, you were the one who introduced them, weren't you?
I know you personally negotiated a founder's compensation package for her. Enough funds to live comfortably for the rest of her life with no financial pressure. I remained silent. I had indeed arranged that deal. I'd never wished total ruin or destitution upon her, yet I also had no desire to reconcile. We had once been husband and wife. That small gesture was the last shred of dignity I chose to leave intact for her.
Is she doing all right? I finally could not stop myself from asking. No.
Martha shook her head, her eyes rimmed red with fresh tears. She drinks nonstop all day long, refuses to listen to any of us. A few days ago, she was hospitalized for severe alcohol poisoning.
A faint sharp twinge pricked my heart.
The doctor said, Martha choked up, she suffered stomach perforation. She can never touch alcohol again for the rest of her life, and her diet requires strict constant monitoring. I stood frozen, unable to find a single word to respond.
The iron-tough businesswoman who could outdrink every rival at corporate galas could no longer tolerate a single sip of liquor. Ethan, I know I have no right to beg you for anything.
Martha looked up at me with the humble pleading gaze of a desperate mother.
Will you go visit her? Just once.
She refuses to see anyone, listens to no one's advice. Perhaps if you speak to her frankly, she might finally listen. Staring at Martha's graying hair and streaming tears, I could not bring myself to refuse her request.
Okay, I heard myself agree.
The thick smell of hospital disinfectant hung heavy in the air, oppressive and cold.
I stood outside the ward door, peering through the observation glass. Elena wore a blue and white striped patient gown, leaning back against the bed headboard, staring blankly out the ward window. Sunlight spilled across her face, rendering her pale skin utterly bloodless.
She was frighteningly thin, her jawline sharpened to a fragile point, looking as delicate as easily breakable porcelain. I pushed the ward door open and stepped inside. At the sound of movement, she turned her head. The instant her eyes landed on me, a faint spark of light ignited within her hollow, empty gaze. That light dimmed almost instantly, replaced by defensive coldness and bitter self-mockery.
Here to laugh at my misfortune?
Her voice was rough and raspy from constant drinking. I did not answer her question. I pulled out the visitor chair beside her hospital bed and sat down.
We sat trapped in heavy silence.
Only the soft steady tick of medical monitoring equipment breaking the quiet air.
Why?
She asked after a long stretch of stillness.
Why go out of your way to help me? She meant the founder compensation payment from the acquiring company.
For Mom's sake, I gave the simple, mutually acceptable reason. She tugged weakly at the corner of her mouth, attempting a smile that came out uglier than outright crying.
Ethan, do you think I look pathetic right now?
Yes,
I nodded bluntly. My unfiltered honesty stunned her completely. The Elena Vance I'd once known would accept defeat with grace, even in loss, not waste away in a hospital bed numbing every pain with alcohol like a coward. Coward?
She looked stunned, abruptly sitting upright in the hospital bed.
How can you say that?
You destroyed everything I worked to build.
I destroyed everything?
I looked straight at her. Elena, the only person who destroyed you was yourself. It was your arrogance, your selfishness, your endless sense of entitlement that burned our marriage to ash. It was your stubborn blindness, your terrible judgment of character, and your reckless mismanagement that brought your company to bankruptcy. I merely poured gasoline onto the fire you lit with your own 2 hands. My words acted as a sharp blade, slicing through the comforting delusion she'd hidden behind for months, forcing her to face unvarnished reality. She stared at me blankly, hot tears spilling down her cheeks without warning.
I was wrong.
She covered her face with both hands, her shoulders shaking violently with unrestrained sobs.
I know I was wrong, Ethan. I truly understand now.
She cried like a small child, every ounce of her strength and performative pride collapsing completely in that single moment.
I watched her quietly.
I did not reach out to comfort her, did not hand her a single tissue.
Some mistakes must be borne alone. Some pain cannot be eased by another's sympathy.
She cried for a very long time before gradually calming down.
Can we go back to how we were?
She lifted her tear-streaked face, a final thread of desperate hope lingering in her red eyes.
Can we return to the way things used to be?
I shook my head firmly.
Elena, there is no going back. I stood to take my leave. Look forward from now on. That was the last sentence I spoke to her. I walked out of the ward and closed the door behind me, sealing all of our shared past inside that hospital room. At the far end of the corridor, sunlight flooded the hallway. Marcus leaned against the wall waiting for me. When he spotted me, he handed over a pair of sunglasses. All finished? Yeah. How is she holding up? She'll survive. We walked side by side toward the elevator. Where to next? Office or home? Home, I said simply. Marcus paused in surprise. Home? Since when do you have a real home to go back to? I smiled and offered no reply. The car pulled up outside my apartment building. As I stepped out of the vehicle, Marcus called after me gossipingly. Hey, seriously, are you hiding some beautiful woman inside that apartment of yours? I turned back to glance at him, then spoke clearly. Seriously, I'm hiding a far better version of myself inside. I turned and walked into the residential building alone. Back inside my apartment, sunset light filled the entire living room. I removed my formal suit jacket, walked into the kitchen, and pulled a fresh tomato out of the refrigerator. Then, clumsily, I unlocked my phone and searched for a tutorial, how to make tomato scrambled eggs. On the screen, a chef wearing a cartoon apron explained the steps enthusiastically. I mimicked his motions, cracking eggs and chopping the tomato. The end result was a disaster. I'd poured far too much cooking oil, splattering hot grease across my hand. The eggs burned solid and stuck fast to the pan. The tomato chunks were cut unevenly, a total mess visually. I took a tiny bite of the finished dish, overly salty and bitter. Staring at that failed, lopsided plate of food, I could not stop myself from laughing. As I laughed, my eyes grew warm and stinging. How long had it been since I cooked a meal solely for myself? How long had it been since I enjoyed a life that, however clumsy, fully belonged only to me? My phone suddenly rang, an unfamiliar unknown number. I answered. Hello, is this Mr. Cole? This is Iceland Aurora Travel. Your couple's Northern Lights travel package is about to expire. Do you still wish to retain the booking? I froze mid-breath. I'd secretly reserved the trip ages ago, originally intended as our long-delayed honeymoon. I glanced out the window as the last streaks of sunset were swallowed fully by night. I still need the booking, I said. But adjust it to a single passenger ticket instead. The warm, sweet voice of the customer service agent came through the line. Certainly, sir. Wishing you a pleasant trip. A pleasant trip. Yes, my brand new life had only just truly begun. Epilogue. 1 year later, Reykjavik, Iceland. I stood on a vast sheet of glacial ice wrapped in a thick down parka, staring upward at the night sky. Brilliant swirling auroras danced across the horizon, dreamlike and ethereal. Beside me, a small blonde-haired, blue-eyed little girl tugged gently at the hem of my coat. In broken English, she asked, Mister, are you here alone to watch the lights? I smiled and nodded. Being alone can be quite nice too. She nodded half understanding, then suddenly pointed frantically upward at the sky, screaming in pure excitement. Look! A shooting star! I lifted my gaze to watch a meteor streak bright across the dark heavens. I clasped my hands together and closed my eyes to make a silent wish. I hope the next person I fall in love with remembers how to make tomato scrambled eggs for me. And she absolutely must remember to go light on the salt. Story complete.